Jerry, do you want to?
Okay, thank you all for joining us. You probably heard this 9 times already, some of you. This class will be recorded. You can mute yourself and turn off your video if you don't want to be recorded, but you'll still be able to watch and hear. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Everybody should know how to do that by now. I already in the chat wrote what I just said, and I also wrote, please remember to do the evaluation form. I put the site for the form, and I'll put it in again when we're finished. And at the end, we'll stay open for about 15 minutes for general chat. And before I forget, let me see. Can people see this, or you still see the rest of us? You don't see a picture of the rabbi other than the real rabbi, right?
No.
All right, hold on. I'm going to do this. Right, I have to share my screen here. We have to check and see if this is really the rabbi. Wait a minute. Is that him?
All we
Not
see is
yet.
a line, a gray line.
Yeah, I don't see anything yet.
Huh. Oh, that's a shame.
We got the real.
Well, I'll find it. Okay, so we're going to start with the, actually, we had a special request to, instead of our usual prayer for study that we've been doing all week, we're going to have something a little bit different. And the rabbi is going to lead us in,
Okay,
in
Tov
the-
and Shehekianu.
of course.
oh yeah, oh, before we get to that though, here, well, oh, so you can't see this either. That's really annoying. All right, I'll have to figure out why that's not working. All right, hold on. So I gotta share the screen so you can see those things. Wait a minute.
While
let's
Jerry's
see.
doing that, let me just introduce my friends and my rabbi from Costa Rica, Rabbi David Laor, and he's the rabbi of Congregación B'nai Israel in San Jose, Costa Rica.
Right.
And Jody Steiger, my good friend, who's the president of the congregation now, and one of the founders of the congregation from a number of years ago. She may decide to tell you how many years ago in the history, she may not. So, I just want to say what a machaya it is for Eve and I to be able to share a little bit of our love for our adopted second country, Costa Rica, with other members of our Philadelphia congregation, and to allow other members of the Philadelphia congregations to experience just in this very limited but still good way a little bit of the tremendous warmth that we have enjoyed in and at B'nai Israel. So Jerry, how we doing? There's progress.
What do you see?
We see
Rabbi.
Rabbi.
We see Rabino David Laor.
Oh, good. Oh, so it worked. Okay. So is that the same guy that's on?
Yeah.
with
That's
us?
me.
That's you? Okay, just want to make sure we got the right
That's the
rabbi.
correct rabbi, indeed.
Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to show you, we just happened to find this. Can you see this with the rabbi carrying the Torah? No. Oh, I know why. Hold on. Yeah, there's so many different things. Wait a minute. Here we go. Hold on. This is pretty cool. Do you see this?
Yes,
Oh, that's Rabbi Falk.
right.
Right. So check this out. Check this out. I just happened to find this by accident. He retired from Congregation Ohabei Shalom in Nashville. Does anybody know why that rings a bell?
Rabbi
That's Rabbi Kuhn. That's Rabbi Kuhn's synagogue. That's where he was. That's where he grew up. So this Torah scroll came from Rabbi Kuhn's synagogue. How amazing!
Rabbi Kuhn's our emeritus rabbi our
Ah, okay.
immediately prior chief rabbi, senior rabbi.
I think that's just amazing. All right, so now we're going to go to the blessings, which are on, I think they're on this page. Check this out here. I think we got Hine Matov coming up first. Yep.
Right.
You see that?
That's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, Rabbi, you're all
We're
yours.
everybody should mute and we can sing along, right?
Well, I just wanted to say before we begin that I wanted to begin with a psalm, Psalm 133. And when I say that, you know, I used to take a couple of people, some visitors to the Klothen in Jerusalem. And it says, okay, what about we sing something? It says, okay, let's sing the Psalm 133. And everybody looked at me and says, Psalm 133, what are you talking about? Well, it goes like this. Ine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Ine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. And we have a little shift in Israel because the Reform movement also asked the question, what about achayot? Achayot means not only them, but also the girls. Achim is brothers. What about sisters? So they added, and they says, "Ine ma tovu manayim, shevet achayot gam yachad. Ine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Ine ma tov, shevet achayot gam yachad." So how good and how pleasant it is to be together, brothers and sisters. Qué bueno y qué placentero es que estemos esta noche sentados juntos como hermanos. And I like to say it also in Spanish because it's part of what we have here. Also, the trilingual way that I have to perform the services. And this is interesting. This is now my new style that I never thought about it, that I will have to perform services in 3 languages at the same time, in Hebrew and English and Spanish. And this is something very particular for Bnei Israel, by the way. This is the way we make it. So remember, Psalm 133, that's the one, Ine ma tovu manayim. And also I would like to say that it's so important to be in this meeting because we are so far away and so close to each other right now. And that's the reason we can say the first time that something different happens, the first time you have a new clothing, the first time that we are using the shofar, every time we're doing something different for the first time, the most proper and interesting blessing is to say that we have life, that we have the opportunity to be here right on this moment. And this is exactly what we say. And I would like you to say to me, together with me, of course, you are muted, but I will say it out loud. Baruch ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'echeyanu, vekimanu, vehigianu, lazman azeh. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all the universe, who has kept us alive. He was alive. You sustained us and you brought us to be together in this Zoom moment, this very special moment that we have. And also in Spanish, of course, like I'm used to. Bendito eres tú, Adonai, nuestro Dios, Rey del universo, que nos has mantenido, nos has dado la vida y nos has hecho llegar a este preciso momento. Thank you very much.
Amen.
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 When we come to the portions that Jody and Rab David are going to do, I will introduce them more formally than I have already. But I thought that we'd start, even I wanted to just start to give you a little sense of our discovery of Judaism in Costa Rica, and a little bit about the history of Judaism in Costa Rica. So take it away, Eve.
Okay. Like most gringos, the first time we went to Costa Rica in 1986, we were chasing sun and wildlife. We weren't really thinking about the Jewish community at all. But when we were strolling down the Avenida Central, we saw a bookstore. the Libreria Lehman,
First slide.
Lehman.
Yep, hold
And
on.
then we saw a drugstore, the Pharmacia Fischl. So I'm seeing these Jewish names and I'm thinking there must be a Jewish community here. We subsequently learned about Rebecca Greenspan, who's an internationally known economist who's held many high positions at the UN and subsequently was elected vice president of Costa Rica. And some years later, when Ken was working in the Clinton administration, this shows you how old we are, we had the pleasure of meeting Jaime Darrenbaum, the Costa Rican ambassador to the US. And needless to say, he was one of us.
Apologies, I don't know where the the 3 pictures went, but I'll get them back on. Keep talking.
Okay. And that was our introduction to Jewish life in Costa Rica.
Yeah, a little anecdote about Jaime Darrenbaum. Is that the picture? No. Jaime Darrenbaum is Jaime, Jaime, which is actually the Spanish version of James. But when he came to Washington as ambassador and was welcomed by the Jewish community there, of course, everybody thought his name was Jaime. And so for his entire stay in Washington, actually he's still in Washington, but he's Jaime Darrenbaum. Like, so, and I asked him one time at lunch, I said, how do you, do you mind all these people who think your name's actually Jaime? And he looked at me and said, so new? It was great. So I don't know, Jerry, are we gonna just keep forging ahead? Jerry?
Yeah, I'll show you the pictures when you
Maybe we'll
finish.
do the pictures at the end. So, okay, I just wanted to
Yeah,
give,
okay.
I wanted to give a brief, a very brief history of Jews in Costa Rica. And as with many things about Jewish history, it's shrouded in a good deal of uncertainty. There are people who claim that there were Marranos or conversos accompanying Columbus's voyages, and that some of them left or didn't make the boat back or whatever, and ended up in Costa Rica and have passed on their customs, which have been diluted through time, but are still findable if you look hard enough over the centuries. There is no real evidence for that, but it could be true. Likewise, there are people who said that, which is also true, that there were conversos or Marranos amongst the conquistadores during the Spanish conquest who would have stayed and formed the nucleus of a Jewish community. There's also, I think, very little evidence for that, specifically with regard to Costa Rica, but it could be true. What is more likely true is that in the early history of Costa Rica, not so early, but from the 18th century on, there were visits from Jewish merchants from surrounding Caribbean islands. And if you know your geography, and we should have had a map, but Costa Rica sits on a relatively narrow isthmus between the Caribbean and the Pacific. And so from the Caribbean side, it's very likely that Jewish merchants from some of the Caribbean islands that had significant Jewish populations, Curacao among them, visited Costa Rica. And there is real evidence that some of them or people related to them stayed and formed a small community around the original capital of the country, which is was the city of Cartago, which still exists, but it's no longer the capital. There is real evidence for that, although not, in all honesty, a whole lot. And these would have been very, very small numbers of Jews. More significant numbers came in the later 19th century and the early part of the 20th century. Most of these immigrants to Costa Rica were from Eastern Europe, largely from what was at the time Poland. And that resulted in Jews being known as Polacos, which is the word for Polish people in Spanish in Costa Rica. And that is still a very common term to refer to Jews. It's not derogatory at all. They're called Polacos. This, of course, is the key to understanding the current composition of the community, which is largely Ashkenazi Jews. The larger synagogue, what I call conservadox and some people call Orthodox, sort of official synagogue of the community is Ashkenazic. And that synagogue, that community also maintains a school and other institutions, Zionist organization and things like that, as many Jewish communities in Latin America have. There was an additional, I have to say, because I have a personal connection to this, an additional influx of Jews into Costa Rica fleeing the Nazis. My parents are from Berlin, and my dad had a high school classmate whose family immigrated originally to Bolivia because that was the only place they could be admitted and get a visa. But over the first few years, life being in Bolivia having been very, very hard, apparently, they came to Costa Rica, and I met the son of my father's classmate in Costa Rica about a decade or so ago. And there were small numbers, but not minimal numbers of Jews who came as a result of the rise of the Nazis in Europe. And then, of course, most recently, there are folks like us, many American expats have come to Costa Rica, amongst them Jews, as well as many Israelis. For a while, well, still today, Costa Rica was a big stop on the Israeli post-army tour because of surfing and wildlife and beaches and things like that. But many Israelis have become expats, Israeli expats in Costa Rica over the years. And you hear Hebrew in the oddest of places around the country, I must say. Unexpectedly, you'll all of a sudden hear a conversation in Hebrew in the most out of the way places. It's really pretty funny. So that is, that's pretty much the history. I will say people always ask about anti-Semitism in Costa Rica. I think Jody might be better to talk about that. But my impression is that there was anti-Semitism in the early part of the 20th century. It was mostly not really anti-Jewishness, it was anti-immigrant sentiment. People were concerned about any kind of immigrants coming and diluting the culture and taking jobs and all of the same kind of concerns that we're unfortunately still familiar with. I don't think that there was specifically anti-Jewish agitation at all, which is significant because there was a significant German Costa Rican population of Germans who had come in the 19th century, largely in the coffee industry. And unlike in other countries like Argentina and the US, actually, there don't seem to have been pro-Nazi organizations in the German Costa Rican community, at least from what I've been able to find out. So
okay, before we go to Jody, does this work?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my God, it worked.
The websites, the screenshots from the website's official pharmacy, the Lehman bookstore, and you see the original one on Avenida Central there. It's now the Lehman Group, and they have other business interests all over. And a screenshot of, it's not much of a picture, but of Jaime Darrenbaum. who was the ambassador from, what is it, 98 to 2004, yeah. The history continued with the founding X years ago of a reform, a progressive alternative of Judaism in the country as an alternative to the conservadox practice of the main congregation, and that was B'nai Israel. And Jody is going to give us the history of B'nai Israel. Jody, as she intimated before, is a incredibly fascinating person of immense talent. She is a longtime expatriate in Costa Rica, a Costa Rican citizen now, originally from New York, and is a theater designer and producer, and was the director of the National Theater of Costa Rica, which if you ever visit is in a gorgeous building, which you absolutely must tour.
With a wonderful cafe.
With a wonderful cafe that has excellent pastry and coffee. Has been involved in all kinds of creative things. And most recently, just pre-COVID, brought a production by her company to New York, a production about immigration, a very powerful, brutal production that Eve and I were privileged to see in New York exactly, I think, 3 days before lockdown started. So anyway, Jody Steiger, if you'll take over.
Hello, give me a second now to share my screen. Okay, you should all see that, right? I'm welcoming you to B'nai Israel. Good. Thank you. You said very nice things about me, Ken. That was very nice. That made me kind of blush a little, but that was nice. I just want to, before I go into the history of our congregation, I will just tell a little story about Jaime Darrenbaum. He was a good friend of mine from when I first came to Costa Rica. And he suggested I join the Orthodox synagogue, but I couldn't because I was a woman. And I was told your father, your husband, or your son has to become the member. And I wasn't married. I didn't have any children, and my father was in New York City, so I couldn't join the synagogue. And so I realized that there was this, what we say in Spanish, un bache. There was a hole or a gap in my life. And I'm named after my grandmother, my dad's mom, who left Europe when she was a young girl. She was somewhat rebellious and told her parents that she was not going to marry somebody because she didn't want to have to cut her hair. So they shipped her off to live with her brother in New York. And she always told my aunt, my dad's older sister, that what she learned and what helped her survive was to create new traditions and create new Jewish parts of her life. So that always stuck in my head. Okay. In 1987, so I don't know how many years ago, it's over 35. I have no problems with ages and things like that. Last week I turned 72 years old. It sounds so old, but I feel so young. So I don't care about telling you how old the congregation is or anything like that. It's just, we're alive. My father used to say, I'm getting older, but what's my alternative? And I think that we all can especially relate to that nowadays in what's going on in the world. So it's good to get older. These are some pictures that you see in front of you from the very beginning. There are two boys in the middle and the bottom with kippot, with their arms over a chair. The one on the right side is my son Alberto, whose house I'm in now. But when Alberto was 5, he said to me, Mom, there's somebody I want to invite home from lunch. I met him on the bus going to school. He's a really nice kid. His name is Saul. He lives next to the Casa Italia and his mother's name is Rosa. So I was expecting this Italian kid, right? We invited him for lunch and Saul came into the house and it happened to be during Passover. And I had a box of matzah on the table. So Saul and Alberto sat down at the table and they're eating lunch and Saul was very quiet. And then all of a sudden Saul says to me, right? The Egyptians were really bad people. Aha, he's looking at this box of matzah and he says the Egyptians are really bad people. So when his mom, Rosa, came a little bit later to pick him up, I said, Rosa, are you Jewish? And she said, yes, we're Jewish. And I said, well, we should do something. We should get together. I mean, we're Jewish also, you know. And she said, well, there's another family in the same grade at school, the Dickerman family. We're from Honduras and they're also Jewish. So we started meeting on Friday nights and we'd meet at each other's houses and all we would do is say the blessings for wine and light the candles, say the blessings on wine and emotzi, and the children would all go and play and we would dream about having a synagogue someday. And then with the little boy that's sitting next to my son Alberto, David Tenbrink, when his family became involved, Hilda and Jerry Tenbrink and their 3 children, let me see if I have more pictures of them. You see them over here, more grown up, and you see them all down here in this picture. These were the kids. The Tenbrinks in their home had a big outdoor space where we would meet for the holidays. And so we met for Rosh Hashanah. And over here in this one, you can see we met in Hilda's house. That's Hilda. And this is the son of the Israeli ambassador at the time, Yair. This is my son, Alberto. And these are all the little kids that we started the congregation for. After about 2 or 3 years, we were able to rent a little old building that had been a bar. And after it was a bar, it became a Baha'i center. And the Baha'i religion also pray toward the east to Jerusalem. So we had this like space where we could put our bima, and we were there for a few years when we decided to buy the building. And then as time went on and our synagogue grew, we first decided to buy a cemetery. That was the first major expense that we had. We bought the land for the cemetery. We felt that that was of utmost importance. And then we decided we would knock down the old building and build a new synagogue. This picture is the day that we inaugurated the new synagogue. But I will go back and tell you one little anecdote about Rabbi Falk, who has since passed away. Rabbi Falk was sent to us. We didn't know if we were going to be, I grew up in a conservative synagogue in New York. And there were other people who grew up in Orthodox synagogues in South America, people who came from Israel. We were an international group with all kinds of backgrounds. One of our other founding families, the Sussans, Marvin Sussan, was from Rabbi Plout's synagogue in Toronto, Holy Blossom. And he wanted us to be more aligned with Reform Judaism. So we wrote to all the movements and said, help. And the only organization that helped us was first from the States, Union of Jewish Reform Synagogues. And then they led us to World Union, and that was where we got our help. So they sent us Rabbi Falk with the Torah, and we had our first big fight. What were we going to call ourselves? Because we had previously started calling ourselves the International Jewish Community. But that, we didn't like that. We wanted a name. And so a lot of people wanted to call us Beth Israel. And other people wanted to be B'nai, but not B'nai, they wanted to be Beth Israel, or they wanted to be something else or something else. And we were arguing and arguing and arguing. And Rabbi Falk said, wait a minute. Beth Israel means the house of Israel. You guys don't have a house yet, but you are all children of Israel. So you should think about using the name B'nai Israel. And that was how we chose the name B'nai Israel. What kept us together and what kept us growing were our kids. This one over here in the middle is my daughter, and 2 other girls. Mariana has her children in our Hebrew school. She's a lawyer. Rosie Wagger has since left the country. She lives in Canada. But what kept us going, and here's a picture of the kids from in the Hebrew school. in our old building that was an old wooden structure. But what kept us going all those years were the different events in to give our kids a Jewish life. They weren't able to be accepted in the Orthodox congregation. And so we decided, we had to make the synagogue stronger and stronger. And one of the things that kept us together all those years were our children and openness and welcomeness. Rabbi Plaut came a couple of times to visit us. And at one point, when he came, we had an event with the women's group of the Orthodox synagogue. And he was talking about how Jewish groups should all work together. The same way we're trying to do something together with you guys in Philadelphia, he was saying Jewish communities within the same country have to be together and work together. And that was considered to the people in the Centro Israelita to be a very radical concept in those days. That since has changed. It's calmed down now. Women can be members. At one point, Jaime called and said, I have to tell you this because they told me to tell you, you can become a member now. I know you're not interested anymore because you founded your own synagogue, but now we have women who are members. And we have since become very, very close with the people from Centro Israelita, and we respect each other. We respect each other's different points of view on how to celebrate Judaism. Costa Rica also has a pretty strong Chabad synagogue and a couple of little other Jewish, for a tiny country with so few Jews, we have like 5 or 6 different groups of Jewish people. But I think each of the groups know who we are and we do respect each other. I was in Venice last year, not this past year, but the year before, not in 2020. We've all been locked down. But in 2019, my sister and her husband and Carlos and I were in Venice for Passover, and we celebrated. Went to the Jewish ghetto, the old Jewish ghetto, and we were like practically accosted by the Chabad rabbi who invited us to participate in their Seder. And once we said we were from Costa Rica, immediately started talking about how he knows the Chabad rabbi in Costa Rica. And you realize that there's a lot more that hold us together as Jews. Again, there's more pictures of our kids that we just watch generation by generation. The little girl down here, this one over here, she's now the leader of our youth group. And she's done her, that's Hannah, Rabbi, just so you recognize her. She's become a very active member. She's the one in charge of Netzer and Tamar and coordinates with young adult groups in Israel and in Latin America. And she will be one of the people who we hope will be working with your young adults and bringing things together. But there she is, and now she's an active member of the congregation. This is already in our current synagogue, and this is in our current synagogue. It's a picture of one of our boards of directors. Our beamer is right there, and you can see how as time goes on, our kids are getting older, we're getting older, supposedly. And the last picture I want to share with you, you can see different events that we've done over the years, is this one where we were celebrating Yom HaZmaut, and the entire congregation was together as we were all about to start dancing. Okay. What else can I tell you about us? One of the things that we all felt at one point that we needed to be welcomed. And Connie mentioned in the chat that she 11 years ago was in Costa Rica and participated in a service with us. We open our arms to people who are visiting. We open our synagogue. We're happy to share with people. If there's anything I think that symbolizes who we are and what we do in the congregation, it's just that we try to be as welcoming and as opening as possible. We are a Reform synagogue. that's been very important. We've had a challenge in that over the years, at the beginning, we'd get our rabbis from the States, but they spoke English. And it was not appropriate anymore in a synagogue that was more and more Spanish speaking. We have a trilingual prayer book, as the rabbi had mentioned at the beginning. It's in Spanish. It's actually quadrilingue because it's English, Spanish, and Hebrew, and transliteration. And so you can pick and choose what you want to follow. But we realized we needed Spanish language rabbis. And at that time, it was almost impossible to get a Reformed Spanish language rabbi. So for several years, we went through rabbis of the Masorti movement, which is the conservative movement out of Argentina. And that, we had to grow from that. You know, we had to see who we really were and who we really are. And I always avoided being president of the congregation, even though I was one of the founders, because I work in theater, I work at night. And so it's very hard for me sometimes to be able to be as active as I need and want to be. And once before, I had almost become president, but didn't. And this time, for a lot of different reasons, people wanted me to become president. And I said, all right. We were in the middle of starting a rabbi search. And I said, I will accept the presidency, but this time we're going to find a Reform rabbi. So we wrote to World Union and said, we need a Spanish-speaking Reform rabbi, hopefully from Israel, because if he's a Spanish-speaking gringo, it would be more difficult. But if the person is from Israel, nobody's going to question him. It's going to be much easier to bring back a lot of the parts of Reform Judaism that we had left along the years. And lo and behold, Rabbi Friedlander sent us a list of 11 people. I wrote to them. One of them was Rabbi Laor. He wrote back and said, I'd love to come. And it was, I mean, this doesn't sound appropriate for a rabbi, but it was love at first sight. I mean, we had a terrific talks with him on the phone. And then he came to Costa Rica, and it just worked great. And I will say that we are happily renewing his contract. He wants to stay with us, which we're very happy about. And since he's been here, we really have been able to get back in touch with our Reform roots. So that's 13 minutes. I was given 15, and so I don't want to exceed my time. But I will just say, and it goes back, it's a little anecdote that goes back to some of the things Ken was referring to. My parents used to come to Costa Rica all the time, and they would walk downtown. And there's a part of the downtown area which I never go to. It's not dangerous or anything. It's just not very pretty. It's near the Central Market. And they used to love to walk down there. And they one day were walking by a store, and my mother said to my father, that guy's got to be a paisano. I mean, just look at him. He's got to be a paisano. And so they stopped to say hello. And the guy only spoke Spanish. So my mother just said, start talking to him in Yiddish. And he answered her in Yiddish. And they became great friends. It was called Tienda Sofia. And he and his wife were from Europe. And they spoke Yiddish. And they all became good friends. And my parents, whenever they came to Costa Rica, he and his family were members of the Centro Israelita, and my parents would always say that they were members of Bnei Israel, and they were great friends. They would have coffee together. And so from something as simple as being able to recognize the face of someone and starting to speak Yiddish and having it answered back, to the way Connie was able to come and pray with us on a Friday night, and a couple of other things. Like I had asked Eve when her birthday is, because she and Ken participated in a Friday night service with us the week before her birthday. And we're a small congregation. And so what we do in the announcements on Friday night on Kabbalat Shabbat service is we congratulate people on birthdays or when they've had a baby or a wedding anniversary. And they were there that night. And so I said, hey, they're here tonight. Eve, happy birthday. You know, we know you're going to have a birthday. She said to me, now I would have sworn it was like September, October. Now she told me it's June, which means that time has passed. This has been a challenging year. We've done all our services by Zoom. We did the high holidays by Zoom. We're doing now one presential service a month on Shabbat morning so that we can take out the Torah. And everything else will be on Zoom. Hopefully within 3 to 5, 6 months, we'll all be able to get back together again. And that's our hope. But there are things that come out of these Zoom meetings that I hope we continue with. And later when we talk, I mean, we have lots of ideas about what our congregations can do together, utilizing Zoom as well as trips. So thank you for listening. It's nice that you're all here, and I'll pass the meeting back. And that was exactly 15 minutes.
Beautiful. You should call.
Thank you.
Rabbi, all yours.
Thank you. The first time I heard about Costa Rica, I didn't realize that it was at all any kind of reform movement in Central America. When I was in the college, I was told that most of the communities, reform communities in the world, were basically in the United States, Canada, and all South Africa perhaps, and obviously Australia. A little bit in Europe, that's what I was told, and stronger and stronger and stronger movement, reform movement in Israel. That's where I grew up, basically, when I studied in the Hebrew Union College. So for me, it was really kind of a surprise that before I met Costa Rica, obviously, I was sent from the college to have a meeting with the conservatives. They call it liberal, by the way. They don't try to define specifically which kind of movement you belong to. And they told me you should go and look for the liberal groups in South America. So I made this trip to Argentina and Chile. And then I met a lot of new communities I didn't know about them. And then I realized that opposite to what I knew when I was born in Mexico, that Mexico was completely Orthodox, absolutely Orthodox. And the only conservative movement that I knew, that I grew up with, was Beth Israel Community Center in Mexico City. It was only one single community, that's it. That's the one liberal community in the whole country, Mexico. So for me, it was really a surprise to meet reform and liberal communities. When I say liberal, I mean also conservative. And then I realized it's not really a kind of a boundary. It's not a definition, because when I went to the services and in Chile, for instance, and they called themselves a conservative movement, they were pretty much what I knew in Israel, at least what it's called the reform movement in Israel. You know, women, men, they sit all together and they have the music, and they let the women also call the dominion, and they participate in the Leala Torah. So that kind of concept was for me the one that I knew. It's reform movement. So the first time I heard that someone was looking for a rabbi to speak Spanish from Costa Rica, I was absolutely surprised. I said, Costa Rica, it's such a small country. How come? So I was so curious. I said, I want to see it. I want to meet them, because I was already in Argentina, and I was already I knew about Brazil community, by the way, but I didn't meet them. So I was thrilled, because for me, the reform movement in South America, Central America, South America was such a small movement. And it happened just a couple of years ago. My trip, by the way, to South America was 2-3 years ago. So for me to know that there are more than one reform community in Central South America was a surprise. And I realized that it's also a surprise for many people. Not many people know that we exist. And I found out that they don't know we exist when we were on the biennial in Chicago. And I started mentioning, they see my name and they see Costa Rica, and I said, wait a minute, I have to read it again. Costa Rica, do you have a community in Costa Rica? Most of the people that I met, they didn't know that we existed at all. And when I told Jody, I said, Jody, we have to do something. We have to give some cards, something. People don't know us. People don't know that the reform movement exists in Central America. And not only that, I just received a call from the World Union from Israel, Rabbi Nathan, and we were good friends from before, from the Hebrew Union College. And he told me, we have to create like a map of all the communities, and I would like you to help me. I would like you to kind of assist me to put them all together, to try to put them all together again, because there are, and he told me, when he said that, I almost I almost fell from my chair. We were having a Zoom conversation. I said, you know, we have about 15 communities in Mexico. I said, what are you talking about? 15 communities in Mexico? I never met even one. And now you're talking about 15 communities, small communities, reform communities in Mexico, places like Chapala, like I never imagined. It's this beautiful place, central west of Mexico. And he said, yes, I mean, the reform movement is growing so fast. Nowadays, it's growing so fast in Central America and South America that now we should do something. I have to do something. He's in charge of this project. So I have to map, and I'm going to give you the list. By the way, I can share with you now. I'm going to share the list just for you to have an idea what I'm talking about. And I was kind of surprised. You see my Word document? Do you see it? Yeah. So places like Aruba, Beth Israel Synagogue, Rabbi Daniel Kripper, Bahamas, the Nassau Jewish Community, all of these are reform, liberal, okay? Barbados, Nidchei Israel, Colombia, Cuba, they have the Masorti movement, of course, and it's become very popular nowadays. Curacao, the Dominican Republic, Comunidad Israelita República Dominicana, they are called Masorti movement. In Salvador, obviously, I have met them a couple of times. Comunidad Israelita de El Salvador, they speak Spanish. Guatemala, I knew them before, for a couple of years before. La Asociación Judía de Edat Israel, I'm in touch with them. We have made some activities together. Obviously, Panama, I'm going to show you later on. Honduras, Templo Hebreo Maguen David, that I didn't know about them. Honduras there too, Comunidad Judía de Tegucigalpa. I had no idea they existed. And they have their own web pages, and they have all the presence in the web. Jamaica, Sharei Shalom, Brit Bracha, that's the one that he didn't know, by the way. I explained, Nathan, there was a community, a reform community, and the only reform community in Mexico City, by the way, is Brit Bracha in Mexico City that I met them, and we shared a couple of years ago on a Skype conversation. We didn't have Zoom, so we shared a Skype conversation with them. Comunidad Hebrea in San Miguel de Allende. This is a beautiful, beautiful place. If you know Mexico, and if you don't, this is one of the most tourist beautiful places in Mexico, San Miguel. And there's a community, it's a Jewish community reform movement over there. Jabura de Monterey, this is rather new. It's a couple of years already in the north of Mexico. Chapala, the one that I told you, Lake Chapala, it's a beautiful lake in the center west of Mexico, there in the state of Jalisco. New community. By the way, these Lake Chapala, these guys are expats, all of them. And this is an English-only speaking community in Mexico. Cajal Kadosh, Mexico City, rather new. And this is interesting movement because you were talking a couple of minutes ago, Ken, about the Marranos. And this is, by the way, a community that was built based on Marranos only. And they keep their community as Marranos, they insist. And my rabbi, my teacher and rabbi, Samuel Slater, he used to visit them and to assist them. And he used to say, well, when do you look for conversion? And they were so surprised. He said, we don't need a conversion. We are Marranos, we are Jews. We don't need a conversion. We are supposed to be Jews. And they never accepted a conversion until today. And they keep a very large community, Cajal Kadosh. Sherit Israel, obviously from Panama, that I met him a couple of times. My good friend, Rabbi Gustavo Kraselnik, we're working together now. We're going to have another activity next week. By the way, Jody, you still don't know about it. It's a surprise. We're going to have a Hanukkah special setting with Gustavo and also with
That's great.
The three of us together are now preparing this. It's going to be fine. Very nice. Bet Shalom, San Juan, Puerto Rico, San Martin community. They speak Dutch, by the way. It's interesting. The last two, Hebrew congregation of San Tomas in the Virgin Islands, Suriname, in Dutch, they speak German. This is just 23 liberal communities in Central America only. So this is a large number of communities, and I didn't know about them. Most of them I didn't know about them. So this is very interesting kind of situation. It's a new situation that many communities are being born around Central America. Central America specifically, not South America. For instance, Peru. Peru is a huge country, and they only have two small communities, one in Lima and I forgot the other one, the name and the city. They're just two communities for the whole country. It's a huge country. And in Central America, we have such a small countries, we have so many communities. Like something is happening here in Central America that so many groups are searching for Judaism. You have no idea how much time I have spent in the last months interviewing people that knock our doors. They come to our doors and say, I think my father's come from Jewish. My grandmother used to light candles every 6 day during the week because she didn't know which day it was. But now you realize she was Jew because she was trying to light candles on Tuesday or on Wednesday. She didn't know what day it was actually, but she was lighting candles and she didn't know why. It was interesting. I just had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and so many people are looking like it's kind of a very interesting phenomena that is happening here, especially, I don't know if it's only Costa Rica, but it's happening a lot. Many people are searching for Judaism and even created a new group, a special group that I call it Olam Yehudi, that means it's the world of Judaism, that is for non-Jewish, because there's so many. I mean, at least 50 people that were knocking on our doors in the last 6 months, and they were trying to see if they could come to the synagogue, visit the rabbi, be in the services, etc., etc. And they give me so many stories about the backgrounds, about the stories that they tell, like I told you, of the grandmother that lighted candles every once in a while, and such a different stories that people tell me, and they are asking, they're searching for Judaism. Of course, I might say, like Ken used to explain in the beginning, Costa Rica is not a place that I could actually say it has anti-Semitism, of course not. But we can still feel here and there some anti-Zionism in the universities, not anti-Semitism, but anti-Zionism, against specifically Israel. You can see the Palestinian flags going around and the people shouting things against Benjamin Netanyahu. This politics, but it's not against the Jews, it's against Israel. So that's a big, considered difference between being anti-Semitic to be anti-Zionist. So I realized that there's a lot of work to be done in here, a lot of teaching about Judaism to different people that are searching and they are looking. And I think Bnei Israel is in a very good situation now. Sorry. A very good situation now to try to offer this Judaism to so many people that are looking for it here. And again, I think this is part of the phenomenon that's happening here. Sorry, I need some water.
I will add, while the rabbi goes for his water, two things. He's very right about the aspect of anti-Semitism having a very low position. I mean, there's really no problem, and there's a great amount of work between Jewish and non-Jewish groups, different things. But one interesting point is we used to have a member named Luis Klothen, who has since passed away. Luis was raised in the Orthodox congregation, but then became a member of our synagogue. And he wrote many books on the original Jewish background of the colonial period in Costa Rica. And there are a lot of little things that he picked out. Some of them are just folkloric, but there is a fact that the first governor of Costa Rica was a Marrano Jew. And when the Inquisition discovered that, they brought him to Mexico and he was burned at the stake. There are all kinds of other things, but what the rabbi is mentioning about not knowing why her grandmother would light candles on Friday night, there are many stories like that, many anecdotes about the original possible Jewish Sephardic position. Because remember, Costa Rica, despite its name, which means a rich coast, Costa Rica was very poor. It was one of the poorest places in the colonies. Didn't have gold, didn't have anything. It was trading. They were groups from South America and North America that would come together groups from Mexico, groups of indigenous populations would come to Costa Rica to meet and then leave. We were not considered something else. And so there were a lot of, it was a place to hide. It was a place where people could come from Europe and disappear. And there are, I mean, we could go on a long time talking about all the different anecdotes, but we won't. You have to come to Costa Rica for that. Rabbi, now that you got your water, welcome back.
Thank you. Not only that, I would like to say that the last Inquisition that was in Mexico City was still in 1821. After there was the independence of Mexico was declared, on that same year, 1821, another Inquisition burning was made in the Zócalo of Mexico City. And it's very interesting that a couple of years later, the first flag of Costa Rica, imagine how it might look like. I'm going to show you. It's amazing. I'm going to show you. I didn't know about this. 1823 to 1824. Do you see this? This is a Magen David. This is the Star of David. This was the first flag of Costa Rica. Can you imagine? It's a Magen David. It's a Star of David. And this is the way it was just 3 or 4 years later that the inquisitors in Mexico City still were making a lot of trouble with the Marranos. So I can't believe that many, many Jews were flying away from Mexico south to getting also to this part of Central America. Obviously, now the next, the flags until what we have today, this is the flag Costa Rica until since 1964, obviously, but this is the most important one that I wanted to show you. It tells you a story. It tells you actually a story of what happened here in Costa Rica and how all of the Jews actually came here to live and to make a new life in Costa Rica. I believe that we have a very strong future for the reform movement around here. Many people are looking for and not only for the Judaism, but they're looking for the open Judaism, for the reform Judaism, especially those that are knocking on doors. You know, they're coming here because they say it. Sometimes I call this the conservative Orthodox, like you said, community, and they don't even want to talk to me. So they all know they can come to our community because our community is open, and I can talk to them and I can teach them Judaism, and this is what they were looking for. This is a very interesting phenomenon. Yeah. Any questions that you may have?
I've been answering some of the questions on the chat
Oh, I
via the
didn't see
chat.
it.
But if anybody
I just
wants
wanted to add that he's too modest to say it himself, but Rabbi Laor is, I believe, Rabbi David, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first Latino graduate of the Reformed Seminary in Israel.
That's correct. I'm the first one. Yeah, I'm the first Latino rabbi in the Hebrew Union College. Most of them were Israelis. And Americans, Israelis, Americans, and I'm the first one that was ordained from Latin America. The second one was.
And we got him.
Azalto.
Thank you very much.
So I have a question.
Sure.
At first I had noted, because I knew there was something about a Jewish connection to the government, and Costa Rica had 4 Jewish vice presidents, which I did not know. I believe you're one of them.
No.
Oh no, that's Greenspan. Wait, she didn't mention Rebecca. Were you going to talk about Rebecca Greenspan?
She did mention that we learned early on that there was a Jewish vice president.
Did you want to see?
No,
that?
there were many. There was Lieberman,
4.
Rebecca Greenspan, Fischel, not Fischel.
Yes, yeah,
Not Fischel.
it was official.
Wasn't Fischel. It was Fishman.
All right, okay.
Fishman.
Jody, did you want me to bring up her picture? Did you want me to show that?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
We've just, I mean, I think it's important. There's a funny thing though. If you say to the typical Costa Rican, are there many Jews in Costa Rica? They'll say, ooh, thousands and thousands and thousands. And that's not true. It's a very small group, but they're very vociferous in the sense that Jews are in politics and banking and medicine. Jewish people become leaders. And so, and
Vociferous Jews, that's really funny. I would never expect to hear that. Um, so I do have one question, then I'll go to the other questions. The rabbi mentioned Marranos, and I was always told, and even when I went to a crypto Jewish convention, they made a big deal about never use that term, that it's a pejorative. So do the people that you're talking about, do they use that term, or what's the story?
Depends where you go. If you go to that community, I told you, Monterey, and that's close, it's 1 hour away from Mexico City, they are proud to be called Marranos because they say, actually, we are the ones that we have kept the Judaism for more than 200-300 years since the last time, 300, they say 307, the 1700s, of course, but I don't think it's more than 200 years because they have a tradition and they have papers. They can show you papers, okay, that they have when they bought the specific piece of land, and they see the name of Levi, and they say the name of Cohen, and they show you different papers. It's amazing. Very, very old documentation they still keep, and they say we don't need to convert. We are still Jews. And against, by the way, the Central Committee of Mexico, that's the Central Committee of all the Jewish communities in Mexico City, they don't recognize them as Jews, by the way, because they're Orthodox, all of them. So they don't recognize them as Jews. And they say, we don't need the recognition. We don't need to be in the Central Committee. We are the community of the Marranos. We are proud of it. And by the way, they went to Israel, and many of the guys were in the army. And you will be surprised if you visit them today you can see, by the way, some YouTube videos of them, Venta Prieta in Mexico City. You visit them and you hear Hebrew. They're talking Hebrew between themselves because they know Hebrew. How they know Hebrew? Because the kids went to the army. They were in Israel, they make Aliyah, they went to the army, they came back to teach more Hebrew to the community. And they're speaking fluent Hebrew between themselves. It's amazing. I mean, and they are so proud to be part of the Marrano community. And they don't see this. Do
they use the term converso? Because that.
Yeah, they don't like converso. If you want to really, not to be so polite with them, call them conversos.
Wow.
They hate it.
Converso.
We're not conversos.
That's exactly the opposite.
Exactly the opposite. They say, no, we don't need any conversion. We are Jews from generations and generations of our parents and our grandparents.
Wow.
Yeah, Jerry, I was going to say, I always heard it the other way around. I was taught the other way around, that the converso was a bad word because those were the ones who they took the easy way out, was the idea. They converted to Christianity. But of course, the claim then was when they came back to Judaism, this is a big thing in Cuba, that they had to convert because they were coming from having already converted to Christianity in the family. Whereas the Marranos claim that they never converted. They just became secret, underground Jews.
Yeah, but the word Marrano, I believe, means pig. So
it does.
That's
what they were called by the Spaniards.
Of course, that's the way they were called by the Spanish.
Interesting. Okay, Gail has a question. I see her hand up.
So are there any practices in your worship services or around life cycle events that are unique to you that maybe North American Jews would be not familiar with?
Well, what I'm bringing, I think what I brought to this community is my Israeli style of the current, I would say, I have to be very careful with the words, with the current reform movement in Israel. And when someone asks me about the reform movement in Israel, I says, well, in the whole reform movement, the Israeli reform movement is considered the most conservative one. Why? Because, they pray most of the prayers. They don't skip. They sing all of the songs. They use Hebrew only. And they are open, obviously, okay? But when you compare, obviously, the reform, it's been now a new Siddur reform for the reform movement in Israel, and you compare it to the Siddur that you have in the United States, there are certain differences, of course, in the text, okay, in the things that they add, and they even wanted to add something that I didn't like. For instance, the Birkat HaKohanim, the blessing of the Kohen, it was not on the previous Reform movement, and now it is. If you now open the new Siddur, you will find the Birkat HaKohanim, when by definition, the Reform movement does not recognize anymore different levels. We are all the same. Israel is Israel. We don't have any more Kohen, Levi, and Israel like you used to have in the Orthodox movement. Okay, like you have it. The first one to go to the Aliyah is a Kohen. A Kohen is supposed to make the Kohen blessing with the Talit, etc. And it was taken off on previous versions of the Siddur. And now it's coming back again to the Reform and Siddur in Israel. It's pretty new, by the way. You will find, I was surprised. The first time I saw this, it was like, wow, do you have now the Birkat HaKohanim? Are you sure? Number one, who's going to make it? I mean, we don't have Kohanim anymore. So who's supposed to make it? The Rabbi? I mean, who's supposed to make the Birkat HaKohanim? So it was fun. It was interesting to see this kind of shifting inside of the Israeli Reform movement, a little bit to the right, okay, a little bit more traditional, especially when you see it on the Siddur, the way they make the prayer. So what I'm doing here is trying to make a mix. I'm trying to be as open as possible, bringing some more music from Israel. This is something that I think that I can. It's my bonus. Something I can bring here. New music, new melodies, new songs from Israel that we're using in our services, and not necessarily to make more the services bigger or larger, but to make it more meaningful. And one of the important things on the services that I like the most on the Israeli movement is that you go to a service not only to pray, but to learn. And during the services, you have to teach something new. Like for instance, I'm talking about the tzitzit, okay? After the Shema Israel, we make Lema Anti-Semitism, okay? It's about the tzitzit. And I may stop for a while and then teach you something about this. Why are we saying this? And why are we saying the Psalm X? And why are we saying the why question is so important, because you have to, when you finish the services, you also have to go home saying, wow, today I learned something new. And this is one of the things I like the most. When I'm trying to make the services with a way of learning also as well, when you are praying and also learning. By the way, this is the way we say it on our prayers. Lilmod ulelamed, you have to, before the Shema Israel, when you say Ahavat Olam, Bet Israel, part of the words, you say you have to lilmod and lelamed. You have to learn and to teach, you have to pray, and you have to learn something as well. And this is one of the most important things, in my opinion, during the services that I'm trying to put in, little things I'm trying to add during the services here. I would say this is something personal that I can also like.
I think also one of the biggest differences between our services and services in the States and Reform Synagogue, there's certain things, like I know I've gone to Temple Emmanuel in New York a lot, and a lot of the shuls in the States and the Reform movement, people often don't use kippah. We use kippah, and I mean, no one's going to throw you out if you don't wear a kippah, but we tend to be a little bit more conservative that way in the use of talit and kippah, in that sense, and also the music. I mean, I grew up in a synagogue where we sang the same melodies for the same prayers. And sometimes for me, it's really, really hard. I mean, you're supposed to sing it this way. Now, sometimes I laugh at myself because when we're about to start a prayer, I want to say, I want to do it in the old melody. And then I don't remember if we're singing it in the new melody or the old melody. I don't remember what the old melodies are anymore. But that's something that might be different. The different melodies that we bring to the service I think that's an interesting kind of thing. And the use of many languages, the use of English, Spanish, it's amazing. And you'd think, oh my gosh, how boring and how terrible to have to use all these languages. It isn't. It works really, really well. And especially now with Zoom, it's really cool. Because what we used to do is we would pass out pages with the sermon in English if it was given in Spanish, or the sermon in Spanish if it was given in English. But now it's just right up on the screen. because we just put it right up on the screen. It's much easier. But I mean, I can't tell you what language the rabbi's speaking in sometimes. I just hear him and I understand him, and that's because I more or less speak the two languages, but or the three languages. But I think those are probably some of the biggest differences. I don't think that you would feel at all awkward traditionally or folklorically or in that sense. I mean, you'd feel pretty much like you were in a synagogue anywhere else in the world. We're small. That's probably the big thing. It's a small synagogue. If we have 40 people for a Friday night service in the synagogue, we are really happy. That's a good number of people because we're a tiny synagogue. You know, now actually with Zoom, we get more people. We get more people for services than we've ever gotten before. 6:30, we start our services Friday night at 6:30. There's terrible traffic in Costa Rica. And if you work and go from work to the synagogue, it's really hard to get there by 6:30. But now everybody's at home and locked down. And so you get your wine, you get your candles, you get your bread, you get all ready, and boom, 6:30, we're all there.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I think would be really fun to do together. We have a Hebrew language course that we do. It's a fun class. It's just a fun class. There's no reason why there are people from your congregation in the class with us, or why we're not in classes with you, or why we don't do a joint book club, or these events that we've been doing. There's a large reform movement now in Latin America, the Unión de Judaísmo Reformista, primarily Brazilian congregations, but also Argentina, Peru, Chile, lots of countries. And one of the things that Rav David has been doing is we get these joint sessions where we have our rabbi and another rabbi teaching. And it's really fun. I mean, it's awakening, and it's a way again to be together as Jews cross borders. And it's something that even when the pandemic is over, may it happen soon, I hope we continue with these cross-border Zoom events because they're really, I mean, it's fun, it's learning, and it's a way of realizing that we're not so far apart and so separate, but we're one people.
Yeah. Another example would be also with Guatemala, Jody. Remember, sometimes we have a study. We have a study on the Beit Midrash, and I invite them. And we have a lot of people from Mexico and Guatemala, my old friends from Mexico, or the other communities that we have in contact with in Panama. Suddenly we are all together. We are studying all together in the Beit Midrash, or we are dealing with a topic related to the Parashat Shabua, the weekly portion of the Torah. So we have a lot of activities that we are now sharing our resources and with each other. I'm sharing with Guatemala and Mexico and the rabbi from Panama. We're working together next week to make a special event for Hanukkah. We are all, I think this pandemic, if something good, may I say, that happened because of the pandemic, is that now we are connecting people all the time. Something we didn't have the opportunity, we didn't even think about it before February 2020. We didn't even think about it. And now it's so common. We're thinking about, let's talk to Panama, let's talk to Brazil, let's put it together in Argentina, but it's so common. I mean, it is something that we never thought about.
I have a problem and I have to leave. And I'm sorry for that, but I do have to leave. And so I'm going to have to leave you in the hands of our rabbi and of Ken and Eve, who can talk more about our congregation. But this is just the first of many. And I'm really looking forward to doing more with all of you and to learning who your rabbi, more about your rabbis that we only met once while we were together in Chicago, and the head of your Hebrew school. And I mean, there's so much we can do together. And I hope we can. I hope it works out. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll leave you to continue.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you.
Thanks, Jody.
We're going to be finishing up, and before I thank everybody, I just wanted to, for those of you that came in late, to show you this picture again. That this is the Rabbi Falk that Jody was referring to, the first rabbi. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And he came from, after he retired from this synagogue, and this is the synagogue. I actually visited the synagogue in Nashville and saw Rabbi Kuhn's bar mitzvah picture, which was a hoot, and a picture of his, I think his brother was the president of that synagogue. And the Torah from this synagogue and the rabbi from this synagogue wound up at the Synagogue of B'nai Israel in Costa Rica. So that guarantees that we have, it was meant to be, it was bashert that we have a connection with your synagogue by way of our former rabbi and
the Sefer Torah.
It's really amazing when you think about that. Do you want to say anything, Ken and Eve, to close up?
Am I on yet? Before we started, I had an email from Rabbi Eli, who couldn't be with us in person tonight, but suggested that he would like to sponsor a Zoom Hanukkah lighting on one of the nights of Hanukkah between RS and B'nai Israel. So if anybody who's on this Zoom is interested in that, please, well, we'll have a list of, Jerry, will we have a list of who
Yes,
attended,
yes.
so we can contact you?
Yes,
And Rob David, I hope that's okay with you, and we can work out which night we'll do, and that would be a
Yeah.
lovely way to kick off a relationship.
That would be great.
It involves children.
Start a miracle.
Yeah, right.
well, I wanted to say muchas gracias to the rabbi, to Jody, to Eve and Ken, and to everybody who came tonight to participate. And we look forward to a continued warm relationship with Synagogue B'nai Israel. Did I say it the good
You said
Spanish?
it fine.
3 years of Spanish in high school. That's the best I can do. And we're going to stay on for another 10 minutes or so if people want to just have an open mic night. And I think this is the last of the Gail and Ellen. This is the last one?
No, tomorrow, I think it's at 1:30 is our election recap.
Oh, right. So I hope people will go to that. And I hope that you've enjoyed all the other classes that you've participated in. From looking at the gallery up there, I see that it's pretty much the same steady people have been attending most of the classes, which is really wonderful that you've been taking making such great participation and taking advantage of this amazing opportunity that we do twice a year. So
Evaluation.
What's that?
Evaluation.
Yeah, that was the first thing I said, and I already forgot. So if you go back to the beginning of the chat, you can scroll all the way to the beginning of the chat, and I'll copy it right now and put it in the chat again.
Yeah, because it got posted before everybody joined,
So you don't see the earlier ones.
so we don't see it.
Thank you for explaining that. I didn't know that. Let's try it now. Well, the R disappeared from remember, but there is the evaluation link, and I hope you're filling that out for all the classes. If you forgot to do it for previous classes, you can still use the same form and submit it. And any closing words from the rabbi or Ken? We just continue with just schmoozing for a few more minutes.
Well, I'm very glad. I'm very glad that I have the opportunity to meet you all and to try to explain a little bit. By the way, I am the synagogue. Okay, this is on my back. These are the chairs of the synagogue and the bima. Oh, I didn't show you the bima. There, I have another the other camera. That's the one. That's the bima, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Okay, that's the bima, and I think I'm going to change the sound. I can go there, by the way, so I can tell you goodbye from the bima. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the bima. This is the place I make the services, and I also transmit the services alone, all by myself. And my son sits over here to assist me with the technical issues. But because of the pandemic, I'm just looking at empty chairs all the time. I'm just looking at the camera like I'm doing now, and transmitting the services on normally as Friday night, morning services, shacharit in the morning, and then in the afternoon we have the midrash. But this is the way we work. This is our bima, and if you want to see it, by the way, that's the Sefer Torah. I think we're going to see it now.
Oh, wow. That's so great.
Yeah.
Too bad Rabbi Kuhn's not here to,
Yeah, I'm going to show it to you. I think it has the same cover. Hold on. There we go. You see it? Right here.
yeah, that's it.
That's the Sefer Torah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, when I saw it in the picture, I realized this is the one.
That's awesome.
Okay, so this is the bima, and we have from here I make all the services. Okay. Okay, if you have any other questions, anything you would like to mention, I'm glad.
Well, if there aren't any other questions, Rab David, saludos a Doña Eriquita. And I should say that you are looking at 50% of the paid staff of Israel. There's one staff person, Erica, who is spectacular. Everything else is done on a volunteer, which is marvelous to see.
Yes, a superwoman, Erica. Yeah, indeed. Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate, and I think you have an idea of what we are, where we are, and we would like to very much participate with you. Feel free to contact me for the Hanukkah session. That would be very nice to light the candles together. I think it would be a very good way to, like I said, to start the miracle and start working together like I do with many other communities here in Central America.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you all.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Great to see you again.
Toda Rabba.
Bevakasha. Nice to hear some Hebrew as well.
Muchísimas gracias a todos.
Muchas gracias.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. You're right. Shabbat shalom for tomorrow.
I am muted. And I would like to know about Ken's relationship to the synagogue.
Oh, that's a good question.
Because I really don't know any of the history. You're a member of our synagogue and the synagogue.
Yeah, we have been going to Costa Rica for
Over 30 years.
Over 30 years. I first attended in that former Baha'i place that Jody mentioned, and have gone back, periodically. And it's interesting because the capital city, San Jose, used to be a place where you got out of as fast as possible to go to the beautiful rainforest or the beautiful mountains or the beautiful beaches. But over the years, it's become actually quite a vibrant city with wonderful museums and restaurants and a very, very good art scene, a theater scene. It's really transposed itself and transformed itself. And so now we found ourselves, we also have, of course, friends there, and we found ourselves willing, even if only going for a short period of time, 3 or 4 weeks, to spend some time in the capital. And so as we were spending more time in the city and it was Shabbat, we said, well, we should go to services. And so we started going. And then a few years ago, I had occasion to be there. I had to go on Rosh Hashanah, at Rosh Hashanah time, specifically because I had to renew or something with my residency. I don't know what it was. And so I went to Rosh Hashanah services there. And I mean, when you walk in that door as someone who's not, commonly there, you are literally welcomed with hugs and kisses. It was just so warm. And, I was feeling bad for having to be down there during Rosh Hashanah, and they really brought me into the family. And I just thought, okay, we should join here and support it and, really be more of a real member. And I love the services also. They're very different from ours at Rodef Shalom in many good ways. And again, because it's so small, it's always a very intimate service, which is nice. So yeah, that's our story there.
Are there a lot of Americans moving to Costa Rica now, would you say? or spending, or snowbirds there, or are there people who?
Yeah, there always have been, and for many years they made it very attractive in terms of taxation to be an expat there, and people who had limited amounts of money as retirees found it very attractive because once you're a resident, you're in the national healthcare system there, which is really quite good, and it's compared to us, very, very inexpensive. And so there were, 30 years ago and 20 years ago, a lot of Americans already living there as expatriates. Then the government reduced those financial benefits significantly. You used to be able to buy things tax-free like appliances and cars. You can't do that anymore. And so I think that kind of retirement movement has gone down a little bit, but as the country has developed and there's more American businesses there and international businesses located there, there's been an influx of people involved with those. So I think actually the number of American citizens living there has actually increased over the last.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Okay, I think that it's 8:29 and a half, and last questions, anybody else? Going, this is your last chance. Oh, thanks, Ken and Eve again. It was great, really.
If anybody
really
wants to
fascinating.
get on, if anybody wants to get on the list for their, the email list for information about their services with the links to click in for Zoom, I can just send me an email and I can get you on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great to see you.
Okay, thanks again. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Shakoa. Pura vida.
Pura vida. That's correct. Pura vida.
Mucho gusto.
Muchas gracias. Laila Tov. Good night.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
Ciao.